Good day and welcome. Matthew here again. We are once again at Nurburgring daily race for Group 3, and this time I'm driving the Lamborghini Huracan. And right off the bat we see GR.3 attacking orange. I try to go down the outside of him, or the inside of him, and then I take a wider line to undercut him through here. I knew the Huracan was very good with slow corner speed exits, low speed corner exits, and I assumed that the BMW was going to be a bit weaker than me. And with him being compromised onto the entry of that second part of the chicane, I knew he was going to run wide. I could take that undercut. If he had sat on that apex, I would have been in trouble, but he didn't. I took the undercut and got on the power early, where the Huracan has the advantage, and got ahead. So obviously starting fourth, GDR Freak in the GDR just ahead of me, with orange starting second, and I'll call him Rune because that's easier, starting first in the FT1. I was a little bit afraid of Rune. I thought he might get away, just pull away from us. I know the Toyota's not as good on fuel saving, so maybe he'd lack a bit of raw race pace, with the Toyota being not as good at fuel saving as some other cars. It's not bad, but it's just not as good as some other cars. And so I was hoping he'd fall back towards us later on in the race. But my next goal was just to pass GDR. This was my first race of the night with the Lamborghini. I'd actually run two previous races. I did a McLaren and a Ferrari. And I thought I'd just try another mid-engine car. And the Lamborghini I don't see much of at all. And I guess it's got generally known for its bad tyre wear, but we didn't really have too bad of tyre wear for this setup for the daily race. So I thought I'd give it a go. Turns out it's very similar to the Ferrari. Very similar to drive. Can be quite tricky. I think it's a little bit more safe. It doesn't step out as much compared to the Ferrari. And has a better top end. Much better top speed than the Ferrari. So early impressions going around here, I was pretty happy with it. And I was quite handily keeping up with the GDR ahead of me, which is known for its just pure straight line speed. The turbo brick, as it's dubbed. So far so good. And one of the key features or key things you need to do in this race is to save fuel. And this was almost matching the Ferrari for fuel saving. I had to short shift a little bit more than the Ferrari, but it was very good. And I wasn't sure what to expect. I thought it might be quite a bit more thirsty, but it was excellent on fuel saving, had really good top end speed, and had a similar feel to the Ferrari, so I was quite at home with it. So after a little bit of time, I was gaining a bit more confidence, and I was just trying to latch onto the back of GDR, hunt him down, pass him, and then hopefully catch up with the Toyota, which is slow out of slow corners, but otherwise has very good mid-corner speed and very good high-end speed down the back straight. That car, it doesn't pull out of the corners very well. It's got very poor torque, but when it gets going, it just doesn't seem to stop, and it's got one of the best top speeds out of most of the cars in the game, provided the straight is long enough. But just a bit further on, we come up to this tricky right, left, right corner, and the FT1 in the lead spins out. I can only assume he went too deep on the brakes, but because we've got the power of the replay, I don't need to assume. We'll go have a look. So this is very easy to do if he's done what I think he's done. You can take this combination of corners two different ways. I prefer to brake early, get off the brakes. Yes, he did. So the way I attack that corner, we'll just jump back and watch him again. So you watch him, he just tries to do it in one braking motion. So he gets on the brakes here, stays on the brakes. By now he's realised his mistake, it's too late. But he tries to do it in one braking motion. Where if I jump back to me, I take it in two parts. I brake earlier, shift down 2 gears, on the brakes, off the brakes, and then on the brakes again for the next apex. And it's a bit safer. So yes, in theory you can squeeze more time out of that corner by doing it in one motion, But for a race where it can cost you, well, as you see, first place, quite a bit of places, rejoined in 7th, then it's not worth the risk unless you can nail it every time. But it's very easy to just misjudge that just enough, because there isn't, I don't find a really solid marker for a braking point every time into that corner. So I do like to brake a bit earlier and do sort of the double step, the brake down, brake, shift down, come off the brakes, coast through the right hander, and then brake again when the car's straight. So you just got a bit more control. And I guess I've learnt that from driving a lot of mid-engine cars which wouldn't quite happily step out if I tried to do what the Toyota was doing. Or I guess the front engine cars, I haven't actually had a lot of experience with front engine cars around here recently, but what I guess is that they're quite stable under brakes through there, so they can get away with it and gain a couple of tenths. So with him out the way, it became a race for first, and for the first half of the lap things were looking good. I was quite easily holding on to GTR at this stage, about 7 tenths behind him. This corner has been my weakness all week long. I think I just enter it too soon, and I should be taking a higher line and then coming into the banking, but that's something for me to work on. But he gained about 2 tenths on me there. He's pulled out the time to just over a second, I believe, and I thought I could get it back, but over the back half of this track, he actually really nails it, does a really good job pushing that brick round, and he pulls out up to 1.5 seconds at some point. It does ebb and flow a little bit, but I actually didn't get it back under, I think, 1.2 seconds by the end of the lap. He'd really pulled out a decent gap on me, and I was a little bit worried. I thought earlier when the Toyota went around, I was like, right, this is on for first, this is going to be great, it's going to be me and GTR, we're going to go hammer and tong. But then he started eking out this gap, and I'm pushing. I know the car's a little bit different behaved to the Ferrari, so I don't quite know where to pull the maximum out of it, but I was still pushing, and he was still gaining that little bit of time, and I was just worried. I was worried I'd lost it there. I wasn't going to have much of a chance to come back at him. So here we are rejoining at the start of lap 2, the last lap. I pulled an 8.25 and GTR was an 8.23.8, I believe, which was really quick for him. I was really impressed by his time, and still a little bit worried. But it was through the GP section of this track that I start to really reel him in. And you can see me visually closing the gap here through just these couple of corners. So this just made me think that my experience with the Ferrari, the back half of Nurburgring, the Nordschleife, is very bumpy, and the car does skitter a lot over top of the track rather than really biting the track and driving down the road. So it made me think, well, I've got to get it done in the smooth sections where the car has all the grip and is not jumping across the road. And so I thought, okay, if I can get him in the GP section or in the first half of the Nordschleife, then I might be on for a winner. But the further on the track goes, the more I was worried that he'd pull away. And there's only a couple of places you can realistically overtake before the back half of the circuit, and they're not easy overtakes at all. But as you can see, I've really pulled up on the back of him. He was 1.2, 1.3 seconds ahead at the start of the lap, and I'm now within half a second easy of him. So I was pretty happy. I was also wondering if the GTR was wearing its fronts a lot more. The mid-engine cars do have very balanced tyre wear. They generally wear their rears a lot more, but overall it's a lot more balanced compared to the front-engine rear-wheel drive cars like the GTR. So I was wondering, maybe his front tyres are going off, maybe it's causing him to fall back to me. But we'll just jump up to him. And yeah, you can see they're only a little bit worse, but that much tyre wear isn't really going to affect the performance of the car at this stage. But I did notice he's a little bit worse on fuel than me, so maybe he was doing a bit more fuel saving, and he's had to, try to reclaim some of that fuel, and so he's going slower because of it. But this is one of the sectors where you can overtake if you get a good run and a good line. I was blind going through that fast right-hander. I have a look around here, almost go up beside him, get on the grass a bit, decide to back out. If you're not past him or mostly ahead by this left-hander, just pull out of the pass, pull out of the overtake. It's not worth going side by side through there. You're either just going to, at best, slow yourself down horrendously with the other driver, but more likely you're both going to go off, or one of you is going to go off. He flashes lights at me. Once again, I still have no idea what this secret light code is. I'm going to take it as a thank you for not going side by side through that left-hander, because that is a very silly thing to do, so I took it like that. But still, trying to attack him, try to get as much of a drive out of that short right-hander as possible. I did know I had better drive out of slow corners than he did, and as you saw, I really closed the gap in that short time, but because I stepped the car sideways a bit, cost me a little bit of time and couldn't quite get up to make the pass. So at this stage, I'm waiting for the halfway point in the track where you've got that long sort of kinked back straight, or front straight, or whichever side straight. Say side straight. So we'll jump forward to that, because otherwise it's just a lot of me following him very closely through these tight corners. Really intense racing, really good driving by GDR. I was putting as much pressure on him as I could without trying to make a mistake and trying to force him into a mistake. And a few times he goes wide. Not there though. I thought it was just there. A few times he goes wide, but he does a really good job. But I didn't need to jump forward, turns out, because it's just around the next corner. But this was important. I had to close up on him. I'm in his draft once again down the short straight. I catch him up to him quite nicely, and the key was to get a good drive out of here. So I get on the power. I thought I went wider in the actual race. Maybe I felt more nervous in the race, but went wide enough. In his draft, got to pick a position, and it just depends on where you catch them at this point. Unfortunately, I caught him basically on the apex of that corner. I couldn't go right or left. The car was obviously drifting to the right, so I couldn't pull left, and he had the racing line. I slowed down enough. He goes a little bit wide here. I thought he was off. He manages to slow it down enough to pull it back on track and in front of me. My heart was in the mouth for that moment for him, because so many times you go off there, it's too fast, you're not recovering it, or it's going to cost you a position. Once again, my weakest part of the track, and GTR knows this. I tried to take a slightly different approach this time. Didn't really work. I fell back about 0.7 of a second, but I quickly gained it out of that corner and quickly back onto the back of him. Just still pushing. But since I've missed my two opportunities early on, I really have to concentrate to stay behind him and catch him for the back straight. And that's all I'm doing at the moment, just trying to concentrate on the drive. And it was that moment there that cost me. And I don't know if you saw it, but that's just it. The car, I just drove the car a little bit too much on that curb on the left, and it pulled it sideways. And that's just one of the things we've got to avoid doing in these cars. Well, in the mid-engine cars. Front-engine cars will handle that pretty well, but these cars, you've either got to take the curb as a whole, hop over it, or you avoid it. You can't sort of do any sort of middle ground. And so he's pulled out to 2.8 seconds, and the BMW orange has caught up in the back of me because of that mistake. And you see me nearly lose it through there. The back end steps out. I was so close to clipping the grass. The tyres were quite dirty from that off for a wee while, so I was still struggling to get the pace back down. By this stage I started catching up, and I'd started gapping orange a little bit, but I was a little bit slow through these corners, and orange pulls up in the back of me. I didn't want to go at that position. I know it's dangerous going into the final straight in the lead, because you can expect whoever's behind you to overtake. But I thought, The BMW, I don't believe, has the best top end, and the Lamborghini does have very good top end space. So I thought I'd give it a go. I tried pulling out as much of a lead as possible and kind of weave a little bit across the track to try to break the draft, but that doesn't really work, so I just settle on the left hand side and hope like crazy that the car has enough top end to keep ahead of the BMW. And here he comes. And he's just to my side here, just pulls around. I give him a bit of a tap, and I hit that curb and it pitches me into the air. I did not expect that to happen. I thought my car would hop that curb just nicely, but no, as soon as I hit that curb I flew in the air. I landed back down and hit him in a spin. I go off, I believe because I went off first. I'll just pause that there. I believe because I went off first that he picked up the penalty, even though he also went off. So that was a bit of a shame. And so at the end there you saw me off the throttle and backing off to try to not make him lose that position, because he deserved that second place. He had done a really good job getting up to me after my mistake. So I don't deserve it at that point. He did a really good job getting up to me and getting past me and going side by side down that last kink and then through those left right handers. That my mistake had cost him that penalty, so I didn't want to take that position away, so I tried slowing down. But I wasn't going to give up fourth place for it. So I crossed the line just ahead of fourth, but because Orange actually had a 5-second penalty, he dropped behind me by a second. So it was a bit of a shame for him because he drove a great race, but I'm not going to complain with second. Bit of a shame how it ended. I was having a really good race with GDR. Just a quick replay of this one. You see the curb there? I thought I'd hop this nicely. It just throws me into the air, pitches me off. It actually put him off first, so I don't know how he ended up with the penalty. Chalk one up to the AI or the algorithm for penalties. Once again. And from his perspective, I did give him a little bit of a tap off. Didn't mean to. It's really fast through there. See, I should have got a penalty for that, really. I wasn't off the track when I hit him. Bit of a shame for him, really. Unlucky. Unlucky the penalty gods gave it to him that time. So yeah, that was it. That was the race. Absolutely brilliant race all round. Especially GDR Freak, he did really well to take out the win on that one. I thought I would almost have you by the end, but mistake from me. You didn't make, well, you did make a mistake, but you kept on the track enough to keep ahead of me, and that was the main thing. You did a really good job taking the win. And once again, a shame that Orange got the penalty and dropped back to third, because he also did well to keep the BMW up there and be in a position to overtake me when I made my mistake. But it's been a great week of racing at Nurburgring. It's been a lot of fun, the Group 3s, and just trying different cars. Like the Lamborghini, you very rarely see it around here. I've rarely seen it this week. But it's a really competitive car. I think more so than the Ferrari, which the Ferrari is very competitive in race trim. Qualifying, it doesn't have the single lap pace, but race trim is brilliant. And the Lamborghini's up there too. Tricky cars to drive, they're not the easiest ones to wrap your head around. But when you do, they can really fly, and they've got really good fuel efficiency. So, that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for coming along, I really do appreciate it. And we will see you next time.